Hey guys, welcome back to Augie and me. Today we're reading the Julian chapter. The chapter within that chapter is titled Starting Over. Starts on page 92 and goes to page 94. We went home a week later, but not before Grandmere took us to a very special place, the village she grew up in. It seemed amazing to me that she had never told Dad the whole Torteo story. The only thing he knew was that a family in Danvillers had helped her during the war, but she had never told him any of the details. She had never told him that his own grandmother had died in a concentration camp. Maman, how come you never told me any of this? Dad asked her while we were driving in the car to her village. Oh, you know me, Jules, she answered. I do not like to dwell on the past. Life is ahead of us. If we spend too much time looking backward, we can't see where we are going. Much of the village had changed. Too many bombs and grenades had been dropped. Most of the original houses had been destroyed in the war. Grandmere School was gone. There was really nothing much to see, just Starbucks and shoe stores. But then we drove to Dannervillers, which is where Julian had lived. The village was intact. She took us to the barn where she had stayed for 2 years. The old farmer who lived there now let us, let us walk around and take a look. Grandmere found her initials scrawled in a little nook in one of the horse stalls, which is where she would hide under piles of hay whenever the Nazis were nearby. Grandmere stood in the middle of the barn, with one hand on her face as she looked around. She seemed so tiny there. How are you doing, Grandmere? I asked. Me? Well, she said, smiling. She tilted her head. I lived. I remember thinking when I was staying here that the smell of a horse manure would never leave my nostrils, but I lived. And Jules was born because I lived, and you were born. So what is the smell of the horse manure against all that? Perfume and time make everything easier to bear. Now, there's one more place I want to visit. We drove about 10 minutes away to a tiny cemetery on the outskirts of the village. Grandmere took us directly to a tombstone at the edge of the graveyard. There was a small white ceramic plaque on the tombstone. It was in the shape of a heart and it read, Vivian Buonimer, Neely 27 D'Avril 1905, Decedi Lee 21D November 1985. John Paul Buonimer, Neely 15 D May 1901, Deceded Lee 5D Juliet 1985. Mary Etfrey D. Julian Augustine Buomer, Neely 10 D October 1930. Toomby in June 1944. Puestel de Juris Marcher de Front Haunt, Donsley Jordan D. Duel. I looked at Grandma as she stood looking at the plaque. She kissed her fingers and then reached down to touch it. She was trembling. They treated me like their daughter, she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. She started sobbing. I took her hand and kissed it. Mom took Dad's hand. What does the plaque say? She asked softly. Dad cleared his throat. Here rests Vivian Buonmer, he translated softly, and Jean Paul Buomer, mother and father of Julian Augustine Buomer, born October 10th, 1930, killed June 1944. May he walk forever tall in the garden of God. That wraps up that chapter. I hope that you guys enjoyed. And if you did, hit that like button, and I will see you next time.